Okay, so I'm going to say a little bit more about a different approach, subtly different, maybe not very different. Um, and it might work for some of you. These different approaches that, in a way, I'm offering, some of them will resonate more for you than others. And don't worry if one of them doesn't quite work for you. I'm trying to offer you a range of ways of connecting with Metta. So the way that I'm going to suggest tonight is a sort of imaginative way that assumes that Metta is already there. You start with an assumption that Metta is already there, and that rather than having to bring it into being, what you're doing is opening up to what's already present. It's already present, and you're just opening up to it. It's a model that is in the Buddhist tradition associated often with devotion and surrendering to an imaginative figure like the Buddha. You imagine that there's metta for you and for all beings filling the universe, that there's radiating metta throughout all space and all time. It's there all the time, like sunlight is there all the time. It's just that you can't always see it if there are clouds in the way. You know how if you go on a plane flying and you sometimes climb above the clouds and it's blue and the sun's there all the time. It's a bit like that as an image, that metta is there all the time. And it's not necessarily my metta or your metta. It's like there is just love in the universe. There is just metta all the time. That's an imaginative, I'm talking in a poetic, imaginative way. I'm not trying to create a philosophical theory about it. So it's not like literal necessarily. It's an imaginative truth. But if you can connect with it, it nevertheless is a sort of truth in the way that myths are true. They're true in not a literal historical sense, but in a timeless archetypal sense. And if you can connect in that way, imaginatively, all you then have to do is relax. Because the metta is already there. The only thing that's stopping us being filled with it is that we're too tight and tense, and our hearts are clenched and closed. If you just relax, like relaxing into a warm bath, open the body and the heart and the mind, then the metta is already there. The metta is already there. It's already there for you. It's already there for everybody and everything. It's like the universe is metta made manifest. And that's not, when I say use your imagination to do that, I don't mean it's mere fantasy. I don't mean it's mere make-believe. From a Buddhist perspective, that is nearer the truth than thinking that the universe is just made of dead lumps of cold inert matter. It's nearer the truth, although it's still an as-if poetic truth, but it's closer to reality to think that this universe is love made manifest, is metta made manifest. And the Buddhist tradition has images to help stimulate your imagination. So we've got two images here. One is this statue, or what's called a rupa, of an enlightened being personified, the Buddha, enlightened consciousness personified. And obviously it's not a historical figure, it's not a real person. He wouldn't be gold, he wouldn't be so big, he wouldn't have a bump on his head. Obviously it's an imaginative, poetic image of a mental state, but a mental state that's been personified. And if we were in that mental state, it would be radiant. It would be as if it were golden. It would be shining. It would be huge. It would be expansive. It would be tremendously still and contained, and yet it would be vibrant with energy and life and vitality and love. That's what this image is trying to evoke, that is the potential of our own mind. That's what it would look like if you personified it. And here you've got another image, this time a painted image of a figure from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition called Avalokiteshvara. And he is the embodiment of compassion. When metta meets with suffering, it turns into compassion. So if your heart is full of metta and you meet somebody in pain, naturally there'll be a response of wanting to help, alleviate the pain. Naturally, it's a human tendency, it's a natural one if you allow it. Your heart is full of metta, you meet somebody, it could be a stranger, it could be anybody, even somebody you dislike, and there's suffering. And what happens is the metta meets the suffering and transforms into something called karuna, which is compassion. And this figure is an embodiment of enlightened compassion. Enlightened compassion is, or enlightened metta, is more mysterious than my metta or your metta or ordinary metta. When I feel metta, there's still a sense of me feeling or cultivating metta for others. Yeah? There's still a feeling of me and you, or me and world, or me and others. An enlightened being, I mean, sometimes that's attenuated, but for an enlightened being, there would be no sense of a separate me from separate others. Ultimately, they would recognise we've got separate bodies, but at the level of consciousness, there would be no ultimate separation recognised. So that is a really mysterious state that we can't easily comprehend. We might be able to glimpse it at times. So for example, if you're a parent, a mum or a dad, you probably do experience that with your child, or have done at times. Probably you've experienced lots of other things with your child, where you do feel very separate. But there must be at times a sense where, the child needs something, or is in pain in some way, and there's a natural response, not a thought through, oh, I must help, but you feel the same pain, yeah, and can't help but respond. It's as if your child is another you, yeah. Well, an enlightened being would experience that with all beings. There would just be other yous, and so the metta wouldn't have to be cultivated. It would just be a natural outflowing. And this image represents compassion in that spontaneous, enlightened way. Yeah.
There's a female white Tara.
There are lots of figures, and there is a female white Tara. This isn't white Tara, but white Tara also is an embodiment of compassion. Yeah. So in this way of practicing, if it is a way of practicing, it's very much about relaxing and letting go into this imaginative world of metta. You imagine that it's there, you kind of have confidence that it's there if you let go, and all you have to do is open up. Now, of course, you might find yourself distracted, because prapancha is also something that the mind does. If you find yourself distracted, then you need to keep coming back to being present You could use the breath, for example, use the body, keep coming back in all the ways that we've been talking about earlier. So you do need to be focused enough not to be completely away in distracted fantasy. But if you are able to stay present, then I'd stay present around the heart and the belly, and then you just keep relaxing the heart and the belly and any other areas of tension with this imaginative sense that metta is already there. And if it helps, you could imagine the metta as light, golden light or red light or whatever it feels appropriate. You could imagine it as light pouring down through you and through all beings as you bring them to mind. It's just filling you up with light. Or you could probably think of other images. I used to sometimes just imagine rainbow-coloured water just pouring down onto all beings, sort of soaking them with metta, soaking them with blessings. It's said, there's an image in a Tibetan Buddhist tradition which I really like that says that blessings, metta, is pouring down like rain all the time, but it's like we're in a darkened room with all the windows closed. The doors and the windows are closed and it's dark and it's soundproof, and we don't know that outside it's pouring down with love. And all you have to do is open the window even a tiny fraction to get completely soaked. That's an image from a Tibetan Buddhist tradition for reality as it can be experienced, in a way reality as it really is. In the Buddhist tradition isn't a theistic tradition, so it's not that it's God's love or some divine creator's love. In the Buddhist tradition, this is just how the nature of reality is. You don't have to, as I say, develop a metaphysical explanation for what that really means. It's an experience that you can have rather than something that you can explain. Yeah? It's an experience. So what do you think of that? Have I lost you all, or do you connect with what I'm trying to say? It's another way of working. Certainly I find it a very effective way of working in the practice. But what it does demand is some confidence. Confidence that there's more to life and the world and the universe and consciousness than normally we allow ourselves to think. And for some people, I guess if you've come from a theistic tradition, there might be a sense of aversion to thinking in this way, because a Christian tradition or a Hindu tradition might talk of divine love in this sort of way. So I say Buddhism doesn't put that sort of metaphysical structure onto it. Yeah.
It's very hard to hold that approach with what you were saying earlier about metta being an active intention rather than a feeling. It makes me
Yeah, it's like they feel contradictory. They sound contradictory. And what happens if you open up in this way and the metta comes through? It's not that there isn't an intention. There is an intention, but it no longer feels like your intention. It feels like a bigger intention working through you. And again, I'm talking in as-if terms. That's a metaphorical way of talking. It's as if there is still a will, but it's no longer your will or my will. It's like a universal will of well-wishing that comes through us. It's like we become a vehicle for a larger will almost like a larger consciousness. And that will and that consciousness, that intention, is always one of love, of metta, of well-wishing. So the intention is still there, but somehow it's not me and my intention. Yeah? It's a bigger intention. And if you were a Buddhist, you'd say, well, that is enlightened intention, that is enlightenment trying to reach down to us, the principle of enlightenment, if you like, trying to reach down to us. And that principle is always active in the universe, it's just that we don't open up to it. And that's why you have sort of personified images of it. So there is still, it will feel like an intention, but somehow it's not an intention that you've generated. It's more like an intention that you've opened up to. It's a good question. Shall we give it a go? Are you willing to give it a go? So before you sit, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to chant a mantra to get us into this imaginative frame of mind, this imaginative groove. We're going to chant a mantra, which is the mantra of a Buddha figure called Amitabha. And Amitabha is this archetypal Buddha figure that's sitting on the shrine. And so Cassidy, are you able to chant? I have a sense that you can. The Amitabha mantra. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah? So Sukhasiddhi will lead the chant, if you want to, otherwise I'll do it. Yeah? So let her chant it, and then we'll all join in. And just join in, because what this is, what a mantra is, it's a symbol, it's a sound symbol for a particular quality. And this mantra is a sound symbol for enlightened metta. Yeah? So just as I was saying you could imagine light, you could imagine what metta would sound like. And the Buddhist tradition says it would sound thus. Yeah? And of course that's a poetic image. But we'll chant it until the mantra fades away, and then we'll just sit, and you can choose to do any stage of the Metta Bhavana that you want to, or you could move through them. We'll be sitting for about 20 minutes or so, and you could just move through. I won't ring bells, but what I'd like you to do is try to sit with this approach of opening up to the metta that's already there, rather than feeling that you have to do anything. Actually, all you have to do is relax. And you have to stay present. So, of course, if you drift off, you come back. But once you are present, you try and open and relax more and more. And I'll read some poem at the end or something, possibly. And oh yeah, so homework. Before we settle down, I might as well tell you what we're going to. What I'm going to ask you to do this week, so that I don't have to say it at the end. So I'd really like you to explore what's working for you, and then be intelligent about carrying it on. So, for example, the gratitude list I know is working for some people. And if that's working, then I'd really encourage you to carry it on. Yeah? If it's not working, well then you feel free to try another approach. By now we've started to find other approaches, like subtly working to cultivate metta in a number of ways. And now I'm introducing another approach, which is to open up to the metta that's already present. And you could just see what works for you, but carry on doing the Metta Bhavana. Remember, the receptive dimension is critical, but now we're trying to actively bring in metta as well, and you can find a way that works for you. Yeah? But carry on if you can, if you want to, with trying to bring the attitude of metta into your everyday life. So I've been suggesting that you do one kindly or generous act deliberately, consciously. I'm now going to sort of drop all suggestions and just say, see if you can stay in touch with it in your everyday life and try and just act from it as much as you can. Yeah? Doesn't have to be just one kindly act. See if you can just kind of stay in touch with, yes, I'm trying to practice metta. Of course you'll forget, unless you're really, really mindful. You'll probably forget, but keep coming back to it. This week we're just going to try and live from metta as fully as we can in our everyday life. Yeah? If we can do it for a week, that'd have a real powerful effect. That's what we do on retreat. It's a bit more challenging in London, but you can pretend that you're on retreat and we're on a metta retreat together, and everybody in this room will be trying to do that, hopefully, to some degree or other in their everyday life, and we can come back and talk about it next week. How did that go? So work out how you want to practice every day in terms of the meditation, and then also see if you can bring that in your everyday life. And for now, we're going to take this more self-surrender, open, metta is already there approach, and that might work for you.